Okay then. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. My name is Georgia. I'm one of the client trainers here at Voly. And on the screen there as well, we've got Joe, and he's one of the implementation coordinators at Voly as well. So if you've onboarded recently, you'll recognize both of our faces on there. And it's nice to see you today and be going through some financial reports on the Voly platform with you. So today then, the goal of the webinar is to show you more about our Voly financial reports and what we can offer with them. There's a lot of information to do with our reports. So today we're really just touching the surface of what they're capable of and the more advanced features on there. But as always, if you have any questions at all as a result of anything in the webinar today or just reports in general, don't be shy. Feel free to reach out to your client relationship manager or a member of the team, and we'd be always happy to set up another call or discuss options with you in terms of reporting on there. So then the first thing I want to be showing you is going to be our transaction detail report. So if you've used Voly for a while or at all, and you've been using the reports function, you'll know that we of course have our reports page just here. So this is where you're going to find the main bulk of reports and the reporting features on the platform. But there are options to get reports and information from across the platform. So like I said, there's other places we can find information, other places we can add information to pull into those reports. And one of the best examples of this is our transaction detail report. So if I come into the reports section here, by default, report access is given to admins and captains, but if you're somebody else on board that needs access to reports or you want to change your report options, again, that's something that we might be able to change for you. Just get in touch as it is permission based on there. So in my reports page here, you'll always see your drop-down option, and then you'll be able to see the option to select the relevant report that you have access to. So taking a look then at our transaction detail report, when I select that, it's giving me a few different options here. So we've got our date range, our date type. The date type is going to be relevant to the information you're receiving when you run the report. So if I was to choose invoice date, then the date range here, any information pulled through would be based on the date this information was added to the platform, regardless of whether that transaction was paid or unpaid, if it was an invoice, for example, on there. On the other hand, though, if we go for our date paid, it's going to be only things that have been paid out of the platform during this date range just there. So I'm going to sit with my invoice date for this one, and then I'm going to view the report. And this report's then going to give me a full list of absolutely everything that was added to the platform between these date ranges and some information regarding it. So we've got on them our category that's been selected, the description that's been added on there, and the cost of it in the original currency converted to our reporting currency for the vessel. And then down at the bottom, you have a full total. So essentially, this is the final amount that's been added to the platform during that period I've selected. Now, if I come back to the top here, you'll notice that I've got a few different columns that I can filter by. So I can say here, I want to change the date. I want to see group by supplier, but I've also got a filters drop down. So if I click into my filters here, you'll see by default, without having to do anything extra, automatically pulled through the option to filter by a supplier, by your categories on there. But if you want to take it one step further and you want to utilize our cost centers, you'll also be able to then filter by these. So again, if you're familiar with the platform, if you've used our APA platform, you'll know that cost centers can be added to each and every line. So for example, if I come to my invoices page here and I go to add a new invoice, and let's say then I had a specific cost center I wanted to apply to this transaction line, all I'd then have to do is use my drop down to select the relevant one on there. So my example is here, anything that's related to the tender and tender costs, I'm going to filter to that. And then in my reports, I can filter and see at the end of the month, yes, we spent 100,000, but 30,000 of that was related solely to tender spending on that one. You've also got the option to use additional fields. So if we take a look at that just here, you'll see that gives us more options. So whereas cost centers are just one default statement, if you will, and you'll choose that one per line, additional fields offer much more flexibility. So you can have more than one. You can say this is our VAT region, but then we've also got on there our department as well. And then there are also things you'd be able to filter by in your reports. So if I come back to that transaction detail report on here, and we take a look at it together, We'll be able to see then in my filters, I can then filter by the cost centre. So I can say, yes, it's to do with the tender, but I'm also then able to filter by the VAT region if that's applied as well. And the good thing is, any filters that you apply, not only will it show here that filtered spend, when you download your reports, it will only show that filter as well. And like I say, you can filter against multiple areas at once. If you're wanting to set that up, again, it is permission based. If you're an admin or a captain, you should be able to have the permissions by default, but again, it can vary. But if you take a look on your settings tab just here, you should be able to see two different options. So you've got here the cost centers. So you'll click into that one, create your new cost center and click add. As long as it's display, you'll see it in the reports. And then if you're no longer using it, you can choose to deactivate it as well. And that works in a similar way to our additional fields. But again, because they offer much more flexibility, where you can have option lists, free text boxes, yes, no answers, you create your additional field statement here, and then also select the type and click add. And then if it is an option list, you're able to use the drop down then to add new options on there. So if I also wanted to add onto this one, galley as a department as well, I can add that, and then that's ready to go and visible to anyone that's going to be using those additional fields. So if you're just starting to do filtering and want to get into that next step of more advanced reporting, this is a good place to start. Joe's going to talk to us now about some of the budgeting options in our reports.
Fab. Thank you very much, Georgia. So Georgia's just talked you through there one of our most popular reports, which is that transaction detail. And I think it's fair to say I'm going to talk you through potentially our client's second favourite, and that's the budget to actual report. Now, the clue's in the title. The budget to actual allows you to see the actual spend, so the total of all the expenditure for a certain category versus the budgeted amount in a certain period. So let's just really quickly recap where that would all start. So you'd actually need to start in the budgets tab, because that's where you'd be able to input that budget, which then forms the basis of your budget to actual. So if you've got the relevant permissions, you could navigate along the top bar into the budgets area. And then here in the select budget box, you'd be able to pick any of your budgets that you want to edit or load into the platform. So I'm going to show you, for example, my October last month 2024 budget. Now, as you can see in here, I've already gone through and added my budgeted spend for the groups, and within there, you'd also be able to see each individual category. That's really useful because it means that you can actually have that in the system, and if you give permission to the relevant people, they can also see the budgeted amount there. You've also got the option to import a budget using an Excel file, which essentially has all the months along the top in columns and all your categories in the first column there. That's a little bit quicker if you are doing a full year, for example. Once that's then loaded in, if you were to navigate over to the reports tab, and then through the report type, you'd be able to pick our budget to actual report. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like for that last month one. So let's view that report. As you can see, this is a really useful report because it has that budgeted amount in this column here, and that's the amount, as I explained, I've inputted in the budgets tab, versus the actual spend. This is the sum total of all the expenditure that's been added and approved in the platform for each of those categories in this budget month. And you've also got the variance there. And one of the great features is you can click on the variance and add a comment there, which lots of our clients do. If there's perhaps been an overspend and you want to explain why, that's the opportunity to do that. Now, one thing I wanted to highlight here is this is great for all that operational day-to-day expenditure with the budgeted values there versus the actual. But lots of our clients gave us feedback about expenditure not necessarily being operational day-to-day, month-on-month expenditure, and instead being related to a large project. So, for example, a refit. And you might not necessarily want to see all of that data in the budget to actual for the month of October. If lots of this is for refit or a big new piece of equipment on board, I don't really want that to make it look like I've spent more than I have in the operational month. And that's why we've developed the named budgets feature, and that applies to our budget to actual. So let's go across the top back to our budgets tab then. Now, as you can see here on the right, you've got the add budget box. Now, when you add that, the default option is to add a new month. So let's say I want to do my 2026 budget really early. I could go in and add one of those months and then set the budget. We also have the option to change that to a named budget. And this is where we can add a budget for something like a big refit or an owner's trip, or even just if you've got a one-off purchase that's really large and kind of out of the ordinary. So let's look at one I prepared earlier. If we look here at our refit 2024 that my imaginary boat is currently in as it's winter here in the UK, this is the budgeted expenditure for that refit. So that's all loaded in there. So if we then just go back quickly to the reports tab, let me show you what that named budget would look like in the budget to actual. So here I've selected my budget to actual. I'm going to select my budget, so I'm going to get rid of that October month-on-month operational budget there, because what I want to see now is the budget to actual for my refit. So when I load that there, I've now got my actual for the budgeted refit category when I've selected that budget for my transactions, the budgeted amount there, and my variance. So that's a really useful feature for all of our clients. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you is where you can actually select that budget. So when you're adding expenditure, say an invoice, where do you actually select that the budget is either the month for that operational or perhaps the big project like the refit? So let's go back across the top to our invoices tab and let's pretend we're adding a new invoice. Here, as you see, when just below the invoice date, you'll have the budget box. And in here, you can either select, and obviously it will default to the current month, but here I could select my refit budget. And that would be if the entire invoice related to that. But as I explained, it will default to the current month. Now, one of the things we've got switched on this asset, which we can switch on a case-by-case basis for you if you're interested, is what we call line level budgets. So let's say this invoice is for a supplier, but one of the items I've purchased is my normal operational expenditure. I want that to be in the budget of November 2024. But this line actually relates to my refit. So I don't want this second line to be included in that budget to actual for this month. And that's where line level budgets can be really useful. So if you do think that that would be useful for you, please do get in touch. Hopefully there, I've shown you something that you'll find useful in terms of our budget to actual traditionally with the named budgets and also perhaps that line level budget. I'm going to pass back to Georgia, who will talk us through the sales ledger and how you can show that on Voly.
Thanks, Joe. So yeah, if you're wanting to get a full view of your income versus your expenditure on the vessel, then one of the reports you might want is the profit and loss report. Now, by default, you're not going to see that in your reports drop down, regardless of your level in terms of the vessel, even if you're an admin. Just because that comes with an extra feature on the system. So by default, you'll go onto your invoices page and you would see your purchase invoices and you'd have your suppliers tab here at the top. But if you're wanting to show then income and income-based invoices, so sales invoices and having customers on there, then we need to switch on for you something called accounts receivable. So if that is something you would like and you would like access to the profit and loss report, just get in touch with your client relationship manager and let them know, and they'll be able to enable that. Then once that's done, you'll see that your suppliers list will change to contacts. And if you click into them, you'll then see that you have then customers as well as suppliers. You'll see on your invoices page here that you have your purchase options for your invoices and your sales invoices as well, separate. And then if we come and take a look on the reports, there's a few changes on there as well. So as I've mentioned, we've now unlocked the ability to run our profit and loss report and our profit and loss summary. But also you'll have a change here. So instead of it being just your expenditure detail report, you've then got your income/expenditure detail report. And also looking at my transaction detail report here, we can see that we've got this section here standing for accounts receivable and accounts payable. So you're choosing which which categories you're choosing to run the report by. So by default, accounts payable is of course going to be those expense categories. Accounts receivable is then going to be our sales categories. So you can see there, I've changed the report over and we've now got the sales categories on there. Now, if you are getting accounts receivable switched on, there's a few things you'll need to do as you add your first invoice onto the platform. So the very first thing you'll need to do is add on some sales categories. So by default, if you come to your settings here, once accounts receivable switched on, you'll see a sales categories tab, and this works in a similar way to expenditure categories. So you'll click into them, you'll be able to then create your sales category group. You'll be able to add to that group with a subcategory breakdown, and also we can change the visibility. So only certain departments can access certain categories, like with expense categories. This means that once those have been set up, you'll then be able to come and start adding any sales invoices that you want to add on there. So of course, the big one being charter revenue or revenue from sales on there. I'm going to come and add on in my sales invoices. I'm going to click add invoice and then create my sales invoice for that one. And if I have a look then at my drop down list for my categories, you're then able to see those categories that you've created. And also we can see here, we've got a customer drop down. So this would need to be again created when you're either creating this invoice, like if you were creating a purchase invoice, or you can go onto that contact section into the customer section and add the customer manually on there. Once you've added any of your invoices on here, that's then when you'll be able to see it in your reports in that profit and loss report. So if I come to my profit and loss report just here and click to that one, you've got your date type still, but on this one, you won't be able to see the budget as an option. It's only by date paid or invoice date. And then you've got your date range again. And when you view this report, it's then going to give you your income categories on the top there, any invoices or spend you've got against those categories. And then underneath, you've got then your expense categories as sort of an offset to it. So if you have got, let's say 100,000 as part of your charter income and then 30,000 in expenses, you've then got an overall value there at the bottom. Or of course, if the expenses negate the income, you'll see that reflected down at the bottom there for you as well. It also means that on some of the other reports, like the balance sheet, of course, you'll have the extra section on there as well for those income categories. And like I say, if you're running any of your traditional reports, you'll have that ability then to choose whether it's accounts receivable or accounts payable. One thing as well to mention on there is that your sales categories don't go against your expense categories. So if you are doing things like cross charges and you want it to show as an offset against that exact same category, it might be best to do it as a credit note and stick to sales invoices for the sales aspect. But it depends completely on yourselves how you would like it to show in the reports and what information you're looking to get from the system, as always, on that one. If there's, any questions about accounts receivable, you want to get it switched on, like I say, just get in touch with your client relationship manager and they'll be able to assist you further with that one. Now back to Joe, because he's got some more information regarding the budgets. There's lots on that one for us, for that one.
Thanks, Georgia. Yeah, that's definitely a really useful feature, especially as we go towards Caribbean charter season there. If you've got that charter revenue coming in, how you can show that on the system. Also, just to say, we didn't mention at the beginning, if you do have any questions at all as we're going through, please just pop them in the chat. We will answer at the end if we can. And if not, we'll always reach out to you privately about it. So a couple more things to go still, but just pop in the chat if you do have a question. So what I'm going to talk to you about today now is our committed spend report. So this is really useful for anybody that's using requests heavily. So if you're unfamiliar with that, the requests function is really useful for when you're adding quotes, which you perhaps want to be approved before you then generate a purchase order and then before you receive an invoice from a supplier. And that can be added into your approval flow. So it can go right from those initial quotes from the various suppliers to the preferred supplier and the approved quote. The purchase order is generated, the invoice is received, the invoice may go for approval, and then it can be paid, as you know, from your Voly money accounts in various currencies. So if we just have a quick recap and we pop back to the requests tab, I'm not going to go through a full run through of requests. It's something that lots of our clients do use. And if you want to know more about this, please do just start a live chat, let your CRM know, and we'd love to talk you through this in a quick training session. Essentially, some of the key stages for requests is obviously when something is submitted, it's submitted, and that means it's not received all of the full approval, which means it's waiting for somebody to do that approval before we can consider the request to be open, which is where you'd be able to then generate the purchase order and then mark the invoice as received and link the PO to the invoice and then perhaps go on to pay it. Now, obviously, when the request is open and fully approved, that is committed spend. So you know that's going to be spent. You're just waiting for that invoice. Now, prior to fairly recently, if you scroll to the bottom of this requests page, you can see we still have here the committed spend report in Excel, which is that total of all the outstanding spend, the committed spend, which is the sum total of those open requests, the open values. However, the good news is for those clients using requests, we've now got an integrated budget to total committed spend in the reports tab. So let's leave the requests page and go across a few to reports. Now, as you'll see, just next to the budget to actual, at the very top, you've got the budget to total committed spend, which I'm going to run again for October 2024, last month. And what you'll see when this pulls the data is we've now got one key difference with the budget to actual, and that's this additional committed spend. So now what I can see is I've got the actual spend, that's everything that's actual expenditure. So any invoices that had been received, that would be in here. We've got the committed column, which is that open value of those requests, the committed spend, the total of those two versus the budgeted amount for that category alongside the variance. And as you know, you can still add that variance comment there if you want to explain it. This is really great because it allows you to see that in one place. So previously there wasn't an integrated report. As you know, our reports update always in real time. So this is super useful if you are using requests and you want to see that spend. As George has explained briefly, we can give access to crew for these reports on a limited basis, depending on which categories you'd like them to see. And if you perhaps want those head of departments or captain to be able to see what's been spent, what's committed to be spent versus that budgeted amount in their department or the categories which are likely used by that department, this is something that you would find probably really, really useful. Again, any questions about this, just let us know. The final thing I wanted to show you is our report pack. So those of you that have been watching closely will have spotted that every time I've scrolled towards the bottom of the page, we've got this nice button for Add to Report Pack. And also at the top here, we've got the 2 tabs, Reports, which is where you can select which report you'd like to run, the dates you're running it for, the date type, and then the payable versus receivable. But we've also got this Report Pack tab. And when you click into there, it brings up this, which I've prepared earlier. Now, prior to the arrival of the report pack, a few of our clients, or most of our clients really, were downloading the PDF versions or Excel versions of the reports on Voly, and they were compiling them into a professional looking formatted report pack before then giving that to their client, be it the family office, owner's rep, owning team, whatever. Now you've got the ability to do that directly in Voly. So what you can do is not only add our integrated reports, you can add external PDF pages. And it's really easy to do that just by going down and clicking Add Page here, where you can upload a PDF file, which will be uploaded to the system and added to that report pack. So as you can see, I've already done that here with my Volley Yachting sample report pack that our marketing team made for me just for the webinar. I've already added my budget to actual for October, and I've already added a P&L, but let's go in, and I fancy adding a balance sheet in there as well for the client. I'm going to run the balance sheet, date paid. It'll just pull the data for me from the account. And then once it has, I'll just be able to scroll to the bottom and then add that to my report pack. So here we go. Go down to the bottom, and as you can see, I've got my Add to Report Pack button, and that's now included. Now, let's say that I actually want my balance sheet to be quite near the top. If I go to these 3 dots here, you can click on and move up one. And let's do that again, move up one, because I really want the balance sheet to be there first and foremost. As you can see, that's really incredibly useful tool because it allows you to do it all within the platform. Now, once you've got to this stage, all you need to do is click Download Report Pack. And when you do, it will rerun all the reports so they are really up to date. So let's say somebody had gone in and added an additional transaction for October that I didn't know about when I first added that to the report pack. When I download it, it will rerun that report, so all of that would be included. Let me show you what that will look like then. So here's one I prepared earlier. This is a sample report pack. So I've got that front sheet that I uploaded. That's a PDF that our marketing team created, followed by the balance sheet there and the other reports that I had run. So as you can see, this is a really professional way of making formatted, great looking reports within the Volley platform. So that kind of brings to a close the things we were going to show you. Georgia, I'll just hand back to you quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we've mentioned throughout this sort of session, if you do have any questions at all, feel free to pop them into the chat now and we'll go through them and answer any questions that you may have. The report section as a whole, there's lots to it. There's lots of things we can discuss as well. So maybe we haven't covered something that you want to be able to do on your system. That's absolutely fine. Reach out to the team and we'll be able to walk through any different options that you might have on there. And go through your different, ways of working and things like that. We've touched on a few different things and things we can enhance for you, the crew, for admins and captains on there. And I can see as well now that we've got a couple of questions just on there as well. So I'm just going to stop sharing while we just take a very quick look at those.
That's okay. I'll, if you're all right, Georgia, there's a couple of questions. I'll jump
Yep.
on to the first one, Georgia, if you want to look through the others. So, first question there is if there is an additional cost for turning on accounts receivable. No, there's not. It's something we can do really quickly for you. And when we've done that, as George has explained, suppliers will become contacts. You'll have the ability to add those sales invoices. So obviously, we will make a note of who's asked that question. I can't say it out loud, but we will get in touch with you, or I'll ask your client relationship manager to get in touch with you, because we can certainly set that up on either one boat or multiple boats as you'd like. Georgia, do you want to?
Yes, so I can see there that somebody else uses another management software for in terms of reports and things like that, and it's extracting information from the system. So yeah, anytime you want to extract information from the platform, I think Joe showed you the report pack. Next to the report pack, just on there, you'll always be able to see it as well. Let me just share my screen. It's not playing very nice with me. There we go. So if we take a look then at that together, and I will show you just on here. So if you come on to any reports that you might be running, you'll always be able to download them in the format that suits yourself. So by default, it's usually PDF and Excel, an Excel file as well. Sometimes you'll see next to that is a zip file, and the zip file then contains the Excel file that you can then download and use to upload to any other software you might need to, but also the download of any receipt attachments. So if you are a management company that wants to store them external to the system, if you're running the transaction detail reports, all those attachments would then be saved as well on there. So yeah, you can definitely export the information from Voly and to do whatever you might need to do with it outside of the platform on that one. Do you want to take a look at the next one?
And then we've just got one last question, which is about not being able to see the profit and loss. So it's most likely because you've not actually got that accounts receivable switched on. So in that case, that's again something we can really easily do. And we'll make a note of that and get in touch with you directly. It could be permissions-based, but it's more likely to be based on the fact that you've not got accounts receivable switched on. Dead easy change we can do. That concludes the questions we've got on here. Now, as always, we're always available to answer any questions that you might need. So if you want to start a live chat and ask about reports, we can answer that in the chat for you, or we can always arrange a quick session for anyone that might need it. Very excitingly, I'm going to just talk about the next upcoming webinar, which is with Georgia and me again, which is all about, it's a Christmas webinar, really. We're really both looking forward to concluding the year with a quick volley in review, if you like, of the 12 most exciting features and updates we've had. We've been doing these webinars for around about 9 months now, as I'm sure you're aware, and hopefully you've seen just how quickly and how often we are bringing new features out. There's some that we haven't even mentioned on the webinar. There's so many we couldn't possibly mention them all in 30 minutes. So we're going to highlight our favorite and the most loved features of our clients, really. And that's going to be on Wednesday, the 11th of December, same time. And we'll try and make sure that we pick ones that you're maybe not aware of so that it's kind of useful for you to attend. But we'd really love that if we could have as many clients as we can join that with us to celebrate the end of the year. If you want to join, obviously, you know how you can sign up there, as you have done for the other ones. And yes, any questions you have, please feel free to send us an email or start a live chat. But other than that, unless you've got anything else, Georgia.
No, that's everything from me. We'll see everyone next time, and hopefully we'll be wearing similar hats to our little picture there.
Perfect, yes. So we'll see you all then in December. Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Bye.